get the right fats in your diet, the natural fats. That's just absolutely number one. And you may even find that some of your cravings for the bad foods go away just with that.
Welcome to the Wise Traditions Podcast, sponsored by the Weston A Foundation for Wise Traditions in Food, Farming, and the Healing Arts. We are your source for scientific knowledge and traditional wisdom to help you achieve optimal health.
I'm your host, Hilda Labrada Gore, and our guest today is Sally Fallon Morell, the president of the Weston A Foundation. Sally is an accomplished speaker and author who has inspired thousands to shift from the standard American diet to whole, real foods that are nutrient-dense and nourish in profound and transforming ways. Today's conversation focuses on the first principle of healthy diets according to the Foundation: no refined or denatured foods. Support for Wise Traditions comes from the Nutrition Therapy Institute. The Nutrition Therapy Institute, or NTI, is dedicated to the promotion of health through nutrition education. Visit NTI at ntischool.com. And Magnetico Sleep Pads. Recharge and repair your body while you sleep. MagneticoSleep.com. And now on to the interview recorded at the Weston A. Price Foundation office in Washington, D.C. Welcome to Wise Traditions, Sally.
Thank you, Hilda. It's great to be back with you.
So today we're going to talk about the first principle of the Weston A. Price Foundation, based on his findings from his research. What is principle number one?
Well, first let me just summarize here. When we started the foundation, we felt that we should have really precise, concise principles that people could understand. I think a lot of people think, oh, we should just eat a good diet or no processed foods. And there's a lot more to it than that. So we have 11 principles. The first 3 and the last one were formulated by Dr. Price. And 4 through 10 are principles that we added based on our own research. So that's just a little background for you.
Excellent. Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, so the first principle is that traditional diets contain no refined or denatured foods. Now, I didn't say processed foods because they did process their food, the way they made their grains, for example, or the way they prepared certain foods. That's a kind of processing. The Swiss made bread, for example. That's a processing. But these foods were not refined or denatured by the processing.
Oh, good. So I do want you to define those terms. No refined or denatured foods. So what does that mean?
Okay, so when we refine foods, we take out a part of the food. So when we make white flour, we're taking out the parts of the grain that have all the minerals and vitamins in them, most of the minerals and vitamins. When we refine sugar, we're taking away all of the nutrients that are in the sweet part of the grain, the sugar cane. It's not that traditional cultures had sweet things. Mm-hmm. A lot of them had honey. The Native Americans had maple syrup. It was a very important part of their diet. So we're not saying that they didn't have sweet things, but they didn't have refined sweet things. Their salt had all the trace minerals in it, all the magnesium. It wasn't refined. They didn't take out certain parts. And when you think of it, skim milk is a refined food because you've taken out the fat.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, what about denatured? How is that different from refined?
So denatured, let's just say that you have a food and you irradiate it. Okay? You haven't taken anything out, but you've made the nutrients much harder to absorb, and you've made the oils, the fatty acids, they may be rancid after this process. The same with pasteurization. To me, pasteurization is a denaturing process. You really aren't taking the minerals and vitamins out, but you're making them much harder to absorb. And some of them actually are ruined by the process.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard of irradiation. It's what they do to meat that comes from slaughterhouses so that the bacteria doesn't hurt us, but it's the same thing as pasteurization to me. In other words, they're doing something after the product has come through. Instead of cleaning up their practices, they're doing it afterwards.
Yes, and irradiation in principle kills the bacteria, although we all know that bacteria adjust after time, but doesn't take away the toxins produced by the bacteria. So they might still be there. Now, irradiation, thank goodness, is something that hasn't gone too far. Yes, non-organic spices are irradiated. They wanted to be irradiating all our meat, and there's been a big pushback on that. So as far as I know, that's not happening much here. I know those steaks that you buy in the mail and that they come to you through the mail, not refrigerated. Those have been irradiated.
Okay, so no refined or denatured foods. And you made a distinction earlier. You're not saying unprocessed, but you're saying not refined or denatured.
Right. Because certain foods do need processing. Grains need processing. This is one of our other principles. Grains are very hard to digest, and they need a kind of fermentation. The sourdough bread, the soaking, the souring, to make them digestible. So cultures all over the world did that. They processed vegetables, either by cooking them or fermenting them. So those are processes. And the difference is that in traditional cultures, those processes improved the quality of the food, increased the vitamins, made them more digestible, liberated the minerals for us to absorb.
And some of our processes today are doing the opposite.
Exactly. The modern processing denatures the food and makes the nutrients less available to us.
But I think we thought this was going to help us. I think we thought this will give the food a longer shelf life or make it safer. But in reality, it's not doing us any favors.
It's not doing us any favors. And honestly, there are people who still believe this, that the only way we're going to feed the world, so quote unquote, is to have all this processed food, and we can just compensate for any denaturing by adding a handful of synthetic vitamins. So I mean, to us it sounds crazy, but we need to, see the other point of view. And there are people who really believe that this is the only way we're going to feed people.
I'm quiet because I'm thinking about it. Wow. It is interesting. Some people do think we need to do that to save the world, right? And to feed the world.
Well, and also I think there's people who say people are never going to change. And you can't tell people not to eat sugar, for example, or not to eat junk food. And so we'll add these vitamins and it'll be okay. And to me, that is a very low opinion of the human race. I mean, the human race has infinite capacities for change, for learning, for goodness. And I think that's a very demeaning view of the human race.
Well, speaking of that, I'm thinking back to ancient cultures who would preserve their food. So when we put preservatives in food to make it last longer, what's the difference? Okay,
that's a very good point. Let's take lactofermentation, where you're preserving your cabbages by putting them in a crock and putting a weight on it, put salt in there, and they ferment. Well, what is preserving the food is lactic acid. And this is a very good natural preservative. It's just the same chemical that our bodies have inside that the good bacteria make in our guts. So it's exactly the same. And so this would be a benign preservative. Whereas we have preservatives that are chemicals made in a factory, and we have no idea what their effects are.
And I understand some people say they actually damage our gut, and some of these preservatives or colorings or flavorings that our body doesn't know what to do with, it's because they're not natural. They poke holes in our gut. What do you think of that?
Well, I think a lot of people have leaky guts. I'm not sure that is the right description of it may be, but I think we have leaky guts because we're not getting what we need in our food to create a healthy gut wall. You could also say with the refined carbohydrates, that encourages the growth of candida in the gut, and the candida will poke holes in the gut. They can actually grow through the gut and make it porous.
What are some of the leading foods that we eat today that have been overly processed, refined, or denatured?
Well, to me, it's the industrial fats and oils, or you might say the industrial seed oils. They're called vegetable oils, but that's just kind of a gloss because we all know that vegetables are good, right? So we'll call them vegetable oils, but they're not vegetable oils. They are industrial seed oils. And I remember somebody saying to me, well, you have to process them because when they come out of the seed, they're this dark, black, smelly gunk, and so you have to process them, otherwise people wouldn't eat them. So to me, that's saying if something's coming out of the seed and it's a dark, thick, smelly gunk, that's unappetizing and repulsive, doesn't that tell you that you shouldn't eat it? I think we need to distinguish between two types of seeds. There's types of seeds that you can put in a stone press and the oil comes out. So that would be sesame seed, for example. That's been used for thousands of years.
Olives?
And then olive and coconut, actually they're not seeds.
Okay.
And palm fruit. They're fruits. We should really call those fruit oils.
Uh-huh.
But they are easily extracted from the seed, from the fruit. And those have been used for thousands of years with stone presses. When they come out, they are fresh and they're appetizing. They don't smell bad or anything. So that tells us these are okay.
I see.
But people couldn't press a soybean or a grain of corn and get oil out of that. It just doesn't work that way. They have to be refined and pressed at very high temperatures, and they use hexane to remove the last bit of the oil. And what comes out is extremely unappetizing, dark and gunky and smelly. And then modern technology has figured out how to clean these oils up, remove the colors, they bleach them, remove the odors, there's a part of the process is called degunking.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And put something in a bottle that looks and smells fresh. But it's a complete deception because it's just refined and lots of free radicals, totally all these toxic breakdown products in the oil.
So if it wasn't processed so much, our own instincts would tell us this is not good for us.
Yes.
But because it's deodorized and gone through this process, it's more palatable, but it's still doing us damage.
Yes. Now, ironically, the other seed that's been used worldwide that is easy to extract the oil from is rapeseed. So rapeseed and sesame seed were used in India and China, but in the context of a diet with plenty of saturated fats. And when you just use those alone, then you start to get into problems. And of course, the rapeseed has been genetically engineered. It's not genetic modification, but they've fiddled with it. So they get the canola oil, which has just a little different fatty acid profile.
But so you recommend steering clear of these manipulated oils?
Yes, absolutely. To me, that's the number one thing in the diet that is causing so much harm. Second comes the refined sweeteners, and then third, all the additives. But first and foremost, I always say this, if you want to clean up your diet, that's the first thing you do. Get your fats right and get rid of these industrial fats and oils.
Now, I use coconut oil, and sometimes it says refined. Is that bad?
That's interesting. Interesting question, Hilda. Probably not, because I think by refined, it just means it's been filtered in some way. Mm-hmm. Whereas the seed oils that have been refined, it's a lot more than that.
I see. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get to the sweeteners. What is the process that they go through?
Well, that was the first refined food, wasn't it? Sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Started in about the 1500s, and it actually pushed the colonization of the New World. It was a big factor in slavery because they needed slaves to work the sugar fields. Of course, people just couldn't get enough of it. It was just this really sweet tasting thing. It's something about becoming civilized. There's kind of this need for sweet taste. And it depletes the body, for one thing. It takes a lot more vitamins and minerals to process refined sugar than a non-refined sweetener. But it's also displacing, and that's what Dr. Price says, the displacing foods of modern commerce. So people were eating sugar, and so you can only eat so much in a day. They're eating sugar, and they're not eating, say, cheese or meat or liver or seafood or whatever. It's displacing these nutrient-dense foods.
Oh, so when it does that, it's taking the place of something else that could be nourishing us.
Exactly.
So it's like falsely filling us up, but not giving us what we need.
Exactly. And so you're sort of always hungry. Your body's always hungry. You may not feel hungry, but your body is hungry for nutrients.
Well, it makes me think of the soda machines and the candy machines that are at schools or in the hallways at an office. People think, I need a quick fix, but it's not doing them any good.
No, and it is a quick fix. It's exactly right. It raises the blood sugar. So it gives you a quick burst of energy, but at the expense of your entire body and your entire health. And now, of course, we have a really insidious sweetener. That's the high fructose corn syrup.
We want to take a moment now and thank our sponsors, the Nutrition Therapy Institute, providing science-based courses for on-campus and distant learners alike. NTI stands for Academic Excellence. NTI offers the knowledge base and skills that allow students to achieve their goals in the emerging field of nutrition. NTI's approach is to empower graduates to teach others and help them with their own personal health. Join NTI students all over the world in changing the direction of your own health and or the health of those around you. Go to ntischool.com for more information. And did you know that you are dependent on the Earth's magnetic field for life? Did you know the Earth's magnetic field has declined drastically? Magnetico sleep pads are essential to correct that deficiency. Recharge and repair your body while you sleep. Visit magneticosleep.com. Again, that's magneticosleep.com. And now back to the program.
And it's interesting, why do we have this high fructose corn syrup? Well, in the 1970s, they came up with a slightly different process for making trans fats, partially hydrogenated oil, and the soybean oil worked a lot better than the corn oil. You remember in the old days we had corn oil margarine? Remember that? You don't see that anymore, or very seldom, because it's all made of soybean oil. And so what were these poor corn farmers going to do now? And they came up with this process of making fructose out of glucose. And so the corn does not have fructose in it. It has glucose. And that's not as sweet. For some reason, it's not as satisfying. So this is an enzymatic process that ferments the glucose. I think they're using genetically modified bacteria for this. And it transforms the glucose into fructose. Now, why is this bad? Well, for one thing, there's a lot of chemicals used in this process. Lots of chemicals. And they're not all removed from the high fructose corn syrup. But the other problem is that fructose molecule is just slightly different from the fructose in nature. And so the body can't use it. It can't use it in the Krebs cycle. It can't use it for energy. So there's only one of two things the body can do with it. It either raises triglycerides in the blood or you put it into fat. Because it's not, you can't even get energy from it like you can get from sugar.
Actually, I think the word is getting out that people need to avoid high fructose corn syrup. And this is the reason why.
Yes. Well, I don't think people completely understand, but certainly its reputation for causing weight gain is justified.
So some soda companies are even steering away from it, right?
Yeah.
They'll say on the soda bottle, made with real sugar. Is that an improvement, Sally? What do you think?
Well, it is an improvement, actually. I mean, you can handle sugar. It's not good for you, but you could at least you can use it for energy. But you can't use that fructose. It's like a synthetic fructose.
So you said there were three things.
And next we have the additives.
Okay.
So, and of course the one that's really the worst is the artificial sweeteners like aspartame. And even the soda companies are realizing that they just can't use this anymore. I mean, the FDA's had more complaints about aspartame than any other additive in our food. And it causes everything from sudden passing out to a drop in blood pressure to vision problems, dizziness, headache, migraines, and weight gain.
And what food is it found in?
Well, aspartame, I was just reading about this. They were looking for something else, and they were looking for some kind of drug. And they came up with this, and the man who was working on it accidentally touched it with his finger and put it in his mouth. And it was really sweet. And so that's how it was discovered.
And what are they putting it into?
So they're using it as a substitute for sugar. And the problem with aspartame is it breaks down into formaldehyde and methanol. Methanol is an extremely dangerous form of alcohol and can cause blindness and all sorts of other problems. People making beer have to be scrupulously watched and regulated to make sure you don't get methanol in the beer or in the whiskey or whatever. They have really strict controls to make sure that doesn't happen because methanol can poison you. But nobody's looking at the aspartame, which it breaks down into methanol.
I can hardly believe it's still in our food stream, that they're allowing it.
Well, there have been attempts to get it out of the food, to at least get it labeled. Well, it is mostly labeled. But it's MSG that we've had a hard time getting it labeled. There's just so many assaults on the consumer, so many things that are wrong that need fixing, that, people sort of give up. But what's interesting is that it's kind of happening in spite of the government, because the products with the aspartame are not selling.
I feel like people are stepping away. There's a whole real food movement and kind of clean eating. Is that a little bit what this principle is about?
Yes, and I think that's a very good point. This is starting with the people. It's not the government saying, oh, we want to protect you, we want to make sure that you're safe and healthy. We're going to do this for you. That's never going to happen. The only way it will happen is with the people, each person making an individual choice and having the will to carry it through to eat real food. And that's why I say that the food sources of the future will be the on-farm store, deliveries from the farm, so you know what you're getting. And this is happening, Hilda. I mean, I was just reading a report the other day where they're calling the middle aisles of the supermarket, they're calling them the morgue now, because nobody goes down them.
Oh, really?
Maybe if you're looking for some oats or some beans, but otherwise people are starting to realize, and they're shopping the outsides of the supermarket, which is what they should do.
Well, and I know that the restaurants and grocery stores are trying to market more, how can I put it? They're promoting themselves as healthy,
yes,
and offering real food. I was in a chain restaurant the other day, Panera, and it said, we give you real food without preservatives. They were saying all these things. And yet I have to ask you, do you still think some of these additives, some of these refined and denatured foods are found in what other people call real food?
Oh, yes. There's a lot of them lurking there, a lot of them not labeled. I actually misspoke when I talk about aspartame. That is labeled, but MSG is not labeled. And that's the other additive that we're really concerned about. Sometimes you'll see it on the label, but usually it's there as hydrolyzed protein, or, the caseinates have MSG in them. Soy foods are very high in MSG because it's formed during processing. So they don't even have to put that on the label. They don't have to put anything on the label, but it's there because of the processing. So MSG is a real additive of concern.
Does it wreak havoc with our system somehow?
Yeah, especially the nervous system. And when they gave MSG into rodents in experiments, they gained weight. Yeah, I think the MSG has a lot to do with the obesity crisis that we're seeing today.
Really?
Yes. If you want to study obesity in animals, it's very hard to get an animal to be obese. And one of the ways they do it is to put MSG in their food. And if you don't believe me, just do a Google search or a Medline search for MSG-induced obesity.
Interesting. Because animals want to just run around and eat what they're supposed to. They're not going to gain weight. So that's what they do to get them to gain weight.
Yes, to make them eat more.
Oh, my goodness. And so people might be constantly eating and thinking, oh, I have little willpower, or it's in my genes that I'm overweight, but it may be some of these additives you're talking about.
I really think it is. And, there was a lawsuit from someone who'd eaten McDonald's all his life and was obese, and he sued one of the companies. And the food industry was so alarmed that they actually had laws passed in many states that you can't sue a food producer for causing obesity because it's all your fault, right? It's your lack of willpower. And yet I think they realize that the MSG and other additives in the food I'm not saying they do it every time, but they can cause obesity. And there's a point to what they're saying. I think the vegetable oils cause obesity too. Oh. And we had a wonderful letter a couple of issues ago in our journal. A guy who was very overweight, like 400 pounds. He liked all his food fried. Everything was fried in vegetable oils. And he decided to raise a pig. And he took the pig to the butcher, and they said, well, do you want the lard? And he said, well, I might as well take it. Let's not let it go to waste. And so he started frying all his food in lard. And he actually was eating more because it tasted better. And he lost about 50 pounds.
Are you kidding
Just
me?
eating the same thing.
Oh.
So we don't know the mechanism, but I think that these vegetable oils and these industrial fats, especially when they're heated and rancid, I think that they are having an effect on our physiology in some way.
Absolutely. And what's neat to me is what you're bringing up is based on the research that Dr. Price documented, and he saw it then and we see it now, right? The contrast between those who are eating unprocessed or naturally processed foods and those who are eating foods with these that have been refined or denatured.
Yeah, displacing foods of modern commerce is what he called them. And of course he was looking at teeth, and that was the first thing he saw was the change in the teeth and the shape of the mouth and the shape of the jaw and whether the teeth were straight or crowded. So he was looking at those changes. It took a couple of generations for the obesity to really kick in. And of course these things accumulate over generations.
Yes, they do. And the habits too.
Yeah, right.
We think it's convenient to eat some of these refined or denatured foods, but in reality, they're hindering our well-being.
Yes.
And it's better for us to eat something that may seem inconvenient at first, and after a while, you don't think twice. I used to think, oh, I don't know if I can soak my oats, and now I do it, and I'm like, no big deal.
Yeah, it's just one more minute in your day to put them into soak that night.
And then it tastes so good the next day. Yeah. I'm like, this is fantastic.
Yeah. And they cost so much less than boxed cereals. Now, there's a very good example of a way of processing. Grains have to be processed, we know that. But the extrusion process that makes the dry cereals really denatures the grains. And makes the proteins actually neurotoxic in the grains. Whereas soaking and gentle fermenting and sourdough bread, all these gentle processes improve the nutritional quality of the grain.
Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation. Sally, do you have anything you want to say in closing? If folks could do one thing to apply this principle to their lives, what would you suggest?
Well, I would suggest get your fats right. So get rid of all the industrial fats and oils, all the soybean oil, canola oil, safflower oil, all of those oils, and anything containing those oils. So that means reading labels. And use butter, coconut oil, cooking lard. Duck fat is one of my favorites. Get the right fats in your diet, the natural fats. That's just absolutely number one. And you may even find that some of your cravings for the bad foods go away just with that. And secondly would be to attack the sweeteners. And, that's harder because the sweeteners are addictive. And so I always say be gentle on yourself. Don't go cold turkey. It's okay to have some sweet things every now and then. Try to use natural sweeteners. But that is a very hard one to do.
Well, excellent. I'm glad we did principle number 1. And I know every month we're going to try to hit a principle so that we can get the idea of how to live this way that's going to nourish our bodies based on the wisdom of the past.
Yes, right. Well, thank you, Hilda.
Thank you, Sally.
Thanks for listening today. If you like what you heard, please review this podcast on iTunes and let the world know. Also, you can find out more about our guests and today's topic by going to our website, westinaprice.org. Click on the word podcast to find more information and pertinent links. If you're interested in finding out more about healthy living in general, look for a Weston A. Price chapter near you. Again, go to our website, westinaprice.org, and click on the sidebar to find a local chapter. You'll find a group of like-minded people in your area that can help you on your journey to optimal health. Again, thanks for listening. Wise Traditions is brought to you by the Weston A. Price Foundation for wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts.